we have the accused and the accuser. To the left is the accused. To the right is the accuser. So, this is Trevor Bauer, former Major League Baseball player for the Dodgers. And to the right is Lindsey Hill, who is a former love interest of Trevor's. And she has filed sexual assault claims against him. And they are obviously not true. But we will pretend, for the sake of this video, that there is a possibility that they are true. Because our legal system is broken and it entertains the most ridiculous, frivolous things that you can throw at it. Because lawyers get paid, money gets made, and lives get ruined. But our country, as I've said before, views men as utilities, something to work, something to extract resources out of. And a man's most valuable resource to the government, to the state, is his labor and his money. So, my man Trevor has come prepared during his case, this suit that she filed against him, and he came with text messages and receipts showing that Lindsay is a conniving, narcissistic fraud, looking for the easy way out, like a lot of women do, to attach themselves to a wealthy, resourceful man. And if she cannot marry him, to divorce him 7 years later and get half of his life, then they'll try to get a baby with him. And if they can't get a baby with him or marriage, then they'll resort to sexual assault or physical abuse allegations. Now, for anyone listening to this saying, well, that's too harsh what you're saying, I really don't give a damn at this point. It's not harsh, number one. And number two, what I'm saying is the truth, because we have receipts and text messages to actually back it up. So, this is them two. If you're not familiar with the case, they were in a sexual relationship. She likes to have rough sexual activities in the bedroom. Mr. Trevor obliged her, and she later on filed sexual assault charges. So, at some point, I guess he stopped dealing with her, and she didn't get the results that she wanted. She wasn't able to get a marital commitment. She wasn't able to get him to impregnate her. So this was her final play, or her best opportunity to try to extract money and resources out of this guy. So we're going to go to a video that is done by someone I actually never heard of before. Her name is Sara Gonzalez, and she actually did the video, the interview with Lindsey Hill. And she has gained a new subscriber in me, because I never heard of her prior to this. But she did an excellent job interviewing Lindsey Hill. So we're not going to watch all of it, but we're going to watch a nice majority of it. We're going to watch the questions go back and forth, and we're going to watch how Sara doesn't let Lindsey off the hook, and how she shows the receipts and the text messages that Trevor and his team brought up during his frivolous suit. So let's watch, listen, and then we'll come back and break down what's taking place.
Yesterday, we discussed the conclusion of former Major League Baseball player Trevor Bauer's lawsuit stemming from an alleged sexual assault, and Bauer's recent video in which he released his side of the story with receipts. Joining me now to discuss that is Bauer's accuser herself, Lindsey Hill. Lindsey, I mentioned Bauer's video in which he provided some receipts that, I'm going to be honest with you, make you look like a clout chaser, or I know some people are calling you a cleat chaser, because admittedly you were chasing after several high-profile, wealthy baseball players. Trevor says everything.
Pause. So this woman has a history of chasing high-profile baseball players. This is her MO. So she has a history of doing this. There's motive here. All right, I just want to get that out of the way. There's a motive.
Everything was completely consensual. He also released these text messages that came out in court indicating that you had planned the whole thing out. So I want to read some of these texts from you to a friend between the two of you before you met Trevor, this one. Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. Okay. Victim is an interesting choice of words. I'm going to allow you a chance to explain yourself. But after you agreed to meet, you asked your friend what you should steal. Your friend answered his money. He says, another one from you to a friend, I'm going to his house Wednesday. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll. With a screenshot in which you told him, tryouts don't scare me, Bauer. Pick a day and I am there. Here are some more after you and Trevor met up. Net worth is $51 million, to which your friend responds, bitch, you better secure that bag. Your text, need daddy to choke me out, being an absolute whore to try to get in on his $51 million. You say this wasn't a setup. How can you expect anyone to believe that?
That's a great question. I really appreciate you having me on to even have this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot going on around this, so I really appreciate people who are asking questions about it. The first thing I want to say is, I think that Trevor did this intentionally with the text messages and how he framed this video. There's several things in it that are not correct. And I just want to start out by saying, it's so valid for people to question those text messages. But the root of the problem here is that he is presenting this as one conversation, when in reality he had thousands of messages to choose from, took those, made it look sequential, which it was not. There is no combined screenshot of those things going on one after the other. And as I said,
what does that have to do with anything? If I am being questioned about suspect text messages or emails, and I'm saying in them, my intentions to kill my wife, and then I say in another message to get the life insurance policy, and I say in another message, my friend asks me, how much is it worth? And I say, oh, it's worth $2 million. And then in another message, she says, oh yeah, make sure you get that money, kill your wife. And in another message, so what difference does it make if it's not in sequential order? Which it was in order. She's capping there. I don't believe that for 1 second. Conversations follow a flow. So they weren't talking about, they weren't talking about a TV show or the Barbie movie that they just saw, and then all of a sudden the next answer or sequential questions are about what the text messages were displaying. People, when they talk in conversation, you talk in flow about the previous or the current topic. So I don't believe that for 1 second. So she's playing shadow games at this point. She's shadow boxing. She's saying it's not sequential. So he's taking messages from different points in time and trying to make it be a congruent conversation. When you listen to the questions and the answers in the text messages, they can only be congruent. In order for her to have that particular response, a particular question in the same vein as that response would have had to follow, or else she and her friend are just two crazy people. That's not how people communicate.
Last night as well, there's no text message that ever exists, otherwise he would have put it out there, combining anything about a setup through rough sex, finances, all in one. Those were handpicked, and they were from multiple different conversations, all before we met up. And I think that the video in general doesn't even talk about what actually happened between us two, which is what would have come out during a jury trial. These were all messages that happened before. And then, of course, the video is so valid as well for people to ask questions about. But I do think that video was entirely misleading. He also references the restraining order hearing, which people also have questions about. He says that he was cleared of any wrongdoing, which is actually incorrect. In our civil case, the judge had actually ruled that he had not been cleared of any wrongdoing, and that was a federal court judge. So
I want to get to the domestic violence restraining order hearing as well, but I mean, so you're saying that it's misleading because you're admitting that you did talk about rough sex and wanting rough sex. You did talk about him needing to choke you out. You did talk about stealing his money, but it's misleading because he put them together in the same video as if you had said it in the same conversation when in fact it was separate conversations, correct? That's why it's misleading?
Correct. And as well as not showing, the messages that occurred after where it discusses it strictly in the term of, being.
Now I'm going to stop it for a second here. She admits that she likes rough sex. This is very important. I'm pointing this out because this is very important. Rough sex comes in various forms. It can come with whips. It can come with light choking. It can come with slaps. It can come with biting. In any event, rough sex, there's usually something left behind. There's usually residuals left behind from that type of activity. And what I mean is like bite marks. There can be some bruising. There can be some swelling, some redness, irritation. These are things that happen when you engage in rough sex. It's important for me to point that out because it's going to be very pivotal as we move forward in this interview.
A baseball wife or something like that.
Or something like that. Okay. I'm just curious if you know like the statistical likelihood of you texting your friend premeditated texts saying you wanted him to choke you out and steal his money, take his money, and him actually choking you out, and those two things not being related.
It's a really, really valid question.
So she touches on what I said earlier. There's no way this conversation and these messages were not congruent. It would make no sense. They couldn't be out of order because the answer is exactly predating a question that was asked previously. So it's completely congruent. So she's calling her out on that your explanation that he's taking these things out of order and meshing them together to try to create a conversation that was congruent. She's calling her out on that and saying that's impossible. There's no way this exchange of messages was not a congruent conversation. Again, because if it wasn't congruent, her and her friend would have to be totally batch-ish insane. So it's definitely congruent. And Sara is intelligent enough and brave enough to call her out and say, wait a second, I'm not going to let you play us for stupid and try to run circles around us as if we don't have brain cells.
Question. And like I said, I think you would need to look through each conversation. Those were handpicked. But I can, like I said last night, completely own the fact that those were overly sarcastic, overly inappropriate to some may seem. And it does give off that impression about clout chaser and totally attention-seeking behavior. But I just feel that they have, nothing to do with what actually took place. But it does cause a lot of questions as to why I was, seeking Trevor out. But at the end of the day, there was nothing about a setup with violence and all of this stuff and getting financial gain. It was strictly, a 25 or however old I was at the time, girl trying to get attention from those things and phrasing it in a sarcastic way before we met.
Okay, so I've got a couple other questions on that. So you said in court that he sexually assaulted you on 2 different encounters, and you say the first time that you say he choked you unconscious. Clearly the insinuation is you didn't like it because now you're calling it an assault, but why did you make the drive back to LA to meet back up with him a second time if this man had just assaulted you by your own account?
I always say this. It's really a shame the time we live in now because you have women claiming SA and abuse, the way a person orders an espresso or a latte at Starbucks. Where I came from an era, well, my parents and my grandparents came from an era where when a woman was abused, especially physically, it was so apparent. It was like you had women who were being hit for burning the oatmeal or for forgetting to stock the refrigerator with beer when their husband came home. Like, these were the instances of abuse where it was like, this is abuse. And it went from that to being couples arguing and fighting. That became abuse. And then it morphed into somehow you can be abusive financially. He was financially abusing me. And they have all these different forms of abuse now. And it's become so watered down, just like racism. How everything is racist, everything now is abuse. You talk to someone in a particular way, that's abuse. You say something someone doesn't like, that's abuse. She already admitted that she loves rough sex. She admitted that. And now she's using the term that she was abused. And what I always say is, women that were abused physically or women that were victims of SA, it is such a traumatic experience. And if you follow these women and you talk to these women and you study these women, they do not continue to engage in intimate relations with the individual that did it. They don't go back to hang out with them. They're not going, out to dinner with them. That is not the behaviors of a woman that's been victimized by a man in that manner. She's saying that she was a victim of SA. And Sarah's calling her out and saying, if that is the case, why did you go back to be with him the next day? So her behavior patterns is not conducive to a woman who's been assaulted in that way. So this is stacked against her as well. So we have the text messages, we have the conversation, and now we see the behavior patterns that do not match what it is a woman does when she's been a victim of what she's saying she is a victim of. Sarah is not letting her off the hook.
I think that's a really good question. How I phrased it and how I in the past is that I was so embarrassed by the first encounter that I felt something, deep in me to go and take the power back and to be better and to be what he wanted in a sense. And so I don't know. There's been a lot of, through all the processes, witness experts on the psychology of what happens when you are assaulted, XYZ. But there was something in me that felt like I needed to make it better in a sense.
Okay. But you texted Trevor before you met him, telling him you liked rough sex. Then you texted him after your first sexual encounter with him, which you now call an assault. And according to court records, you told him after that sexual encounter that you had, quote, never been more turned on in your life. That's not really something that someone says when they were just assaulted.
I think it's a super valid question. Everything you're asking me is a super valid question.
I agree. That's why I'm asking them.
Totally. And I think that
I agree. That's why I'm asking them. She's good, man. She's good.
Not, that's what expert witnesses are for in court in terms of the psychology behind that in response.
I'm going to let this play, but I'm going to bring it back because I want to show you something that I caught.
Responses to abuse and things like that. But like I said, I was just trying to make myself feel better about myself after what had happened the first time. And after the first time I left without any markings on my body, my face was fine. I could go to work. And I thought that the second time, would be like the first time minus the things I told him I was not comfortable with.
Yeah, so you mentioned the markings on your body. I want to play a portion of his video in which he plays I would say, interesting video of you in his bed. Watch.
In August of 2021, Lindsay Hill's claims were heard in court. And during those legal proceedings, critical information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team. Information like this video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021, without my knowledge or consent, of course. In it, you can see her lying in bed next to me while I'm sleeping, smirking at the camera without a care in the world, or any marks on her face. I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what actually happened the evening of May 15th and why the video was originally concealed from us.
Lindsay, I think there are a lot of sexual assault survivors who would say you don't look traumatized there and you don't look beaten. And this is allegedly after you say that he brutally attacked you and you had bruises all over your body. You had bruises all over your face. I don't see any bruises there. And I certainly don't see a woman who's just been traumatized by something horrible.
Again, super valid. I think that I woke up that morning and the best way to explain that video is I hadn't seen my entire body yet. I had no idea what had happened considering, I was.
You can see right here that she sidestepped the question. She said, there's no bruises on your body like you claim, and there's no bruises on your face. She immediately went to, I didn't see my body. I didn't examine my body yet. Okay, what about your face? We see the video. There's no bruises and there's no marks on her face. None. But she was brutally attacked, brutally assaulted, and there was marks on her body and marks on her face. This is Lindsay. We see her, right? This is Lindsay's face again. We see it. Now, I want to show you what Lindsay said her face looked like after the assault. As you can see here, there's bruising. She's got black eyes. There's some redness and scratches over here that would be consistent or congruent with someone that's been attacked. There's some side profile pictures of her as well showing more scratches on the right and left side of her face. And this definitely looks like a picture of a woman that's been in a fight. The problem with that is this is supposedly what her face looked like after that night with Trevor. And the problem with that is that in the video, let's go back. Let's go back.
Information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team. Information like this video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. And now we have the meta.
Look at her face. As clear as a sunny day. This face, the night after she was attacked, looks nothing like this picture. Bruises around the eyes, they're black, scratches all over her face. That's what she said she looked like the next day, leaving Trevor's home. When in actuality, this is what she looked like. No bruising.
Data, so there can be no dispute.
No scratches. Look at that. Face is clear as day. Porcelain and spotless. The problem that we have in our country is that we need to stop pretending that what we see and what we hear and what we smell is not what we know it is. This is clearly fraud. She should be criminally prosecuted for this. But she won't do any jail time. This case ended up getting settled. I'll play that portion of the video where Sara goes into that. It wound up getting settled. So the terms of the settlement are not public information. We don't know what it was. So even though this woman lied, even though this woman committed fraud, even though this was premeditated, she will see no jail time, and she still came out in the end with something. She has a history of chasing Major League Baseball players. She has a stream of messages showing that she had a premeditated plan to set him up. And she went so far as to even bruise her face and say that he did it. And she did not go to jail and will not go to jail. He's filed a defamation lawsuit against her, but that is not a criminal prosecution. The one good thing I would say about this is that we know who she is and we see her face. Because in a typical case like this, in a criminal lawsuit anyway, the person that brings the charges, their identity is kept secret. So in this case, it's civil, so we see her identity. She went around doing a whole bunch of interviews, so that's the good thing, because men know the type of person she is and they know to avoid her. Now, I know she specifically targeted baseball players, but now baseball players will know, hockey players, basketball players, football players, lacrosse players, soccer players, even the everyday normal man. This is not something she can ever outrun. This sticks with you for the rest of your life. And though she may not be criminally prosecuted, she will suffer societal consequences when the men she wants and the men she desires will not pursue her or give her a relationship. But like always, there's always a simp, even for someone like this. I'm going to play out the last bit of the video because it was so brilliantly done by Sara. And this is how she closed it out. And like I said, it was brilliant. And me talking about it wouldn't do it the justice that it deserves. So I'm going to get to it, and then we'll play that, and then we'll come back for final thoughts.
Yeah, I wish I could speak more into that, but I am prohibited from talking about that part. So I wish I could go more into detail, but I don't believe I would agree with you on the word con at all. So,
okay.
So I'll go into that more.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, I don't like it when men are falsely accused of doing things, and they have their livelihoods taken from them, and it's done by someone who is, speaking out of both sides of their mouth, saying, well, I wish that this had gone to court, because if it did, boy, let me tell you all the evidence that you could be seeing, but now you can't, and also then settled the case. I don't find that to be credible. I will leave you with this. I want you to learn your lesson on pursuing public figures, and I would ask that you stop sliding into my friend Alex Stein's DMs. Thank you very much, Lindsay.
I really respect.
So Sara was being super professional there. I come from a corporate world, so there's ways of saying things without saying things. So she's being super professional and not breaking her decorum, but she's basically saying that she's a liar. She's a liar. She doesn't believe her. All the evidence points to the fact that she's a liar and that she's a predator and that she's narcissistic. And she said it in a very professional way in keeping her decorum. So, guys, these type of women are out there, and we have a system put in place that rewards it, that rewards this type of bad behavior, this fraudulent behavior. It rewards it. It doesn't punish it. The legal system is not your friend. It is not the justice system. It is the legal system. And before I close this video out, I'm going to show you something that I picked up earlier when Lindsay was speaking. And I'm going to show it to you so that you can see it as well.
assaulted you on 2 different encounters, and you say the first time that you say he choked you unconscious. Clearly the insinuation is you didn't like it, because now you're calling it an assault. But why did you make the drive back to LA to meet back up with him a second time if this man had just assaulted you by your own account?
I'm about to show you.
I think that's a really good question. How I phrased it and how I in the past is that I was so embarrassed by the first encounter that I felt something, deep in me to go and take the power back and to be better and to be what he wanted in a sense. And so I don't know. There's been a lot of, through all the process.
Let me know in the chat if you caught that. There's 4 things she did when I slowed it down in the midst of this ridiculous rehearsed soliloquy. 4 things she did that I caught in real time, that I didn't slow it down. When I seen it, I went back and slowed it down to confirm what I saw. Let me know in the comments if you seen what it is that I caught, and she did it 4 times in a span of 20 seconds. Or was it 20? In a span of 10, 20, 20 seconds, giving her ridiculous spiel about what actually took place. So, guys, listen, we have to protect ourselves. The law is not on our side. These women out here are not our friends. They are not the same women that our great-great-grandmothers were, and that their mothers were, and that their mothers were. We are seen as utilities. The only usefulness they have for us in general is when they need someone to take a bullet, when they need to use us for our labor, or where they need to extract resources out of us. So with that being said, be careful out here, be smart, be wise. I know it's in most men to want a wife and to want a family, but be extremely careful when you pick one. Be extremely careful, be extremely diligent. And if you are a man that has resources, you have a target on your back. There is a target on your back. And the fact that they only see men as utility, when you have a lot of resources, it is exponentially magnified. Thanks for watching this video. I'll put the link to this interview in the body if you want to go check it out. Again, this is Sara Gonzalez, who I've never heard of, but she is excellent reporter. Amazing job here. So check it out. Men, protect yourselves, and I'll talk to you soon.